Hi guys, Wern here, Vaping Wern, and I'm here today with an e-liquid review for a brand called JP Vape Juice. Before I get into the review per se, I just want to talk a little bit about JP Vape Juice. Now, JP Vape Juice is a brand which only produces one flavor, and that flavor happens to be Tre Candy. And this is a 9mg nicotine 50-50 mix. And single product brewers, single flavor brewers are a rarity these days. The only other single flavor brewer that I can think of off the top of my head is Mr. Juicer. I think his name is Mr. Juicer. Yeah, Mr. Juicer, and the flavor is Ocean Blue. These days, everyone makes a ton of flavors, be it a local brewer or an international brewer. There's always more than one flavor. But JP Vape Juice, they make one flavor and one flavor only. Why do they do that? Well, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the brewer about 2 weeks ago, and I had a discussion with him, asked him a few questions. And well, the answer is quite simple actually. They only want to stick to one flavor because they want to do that flavor well, do that flavor perfectly each time you buy a bottle. And I think that's great. Another thing which I think that JP Vape Juice is doing very well, again I feel that it's another rarity, is that they mix their liquids individually. What do I mean by individually? Well, basically, I wouldn't be wrong by saying that a lot of more commercial brands these days, they mix their liquids in batches. Big batches, small batches, either way, they always do their liquids in batches. They mix them all together, let them steep in a batch, and then they individually bottle them. The difference that you get by buying a bottle of Tre Candy is that every bottle is individually bottled, or rather individually made in the bottle itself. What does that mean? Well, let's say that Tre Candy's recipe required 2 milliliters of flavoring number 1, 1 milliliter of flavoring number 2, 1 milliliter of nicotine, X amount of PG, X amount of VG. Let's assume that that was the recipe. Well, basically what the brewer does is every fortnight he lines up 200 bottles, opens them all up, and then puts in the flavoring bottle by bottle, puts in flavoring number 2 bottle by bottle, puts in nicotine bottle by bottle, so on so forth. Once he's finished filling up all 200 bottles, he slaps a label on, puts the cap on, puts them aside to steep. Obviously this is a very time-consuming process. Obviously it's he can churn out much fewer bottles than brewing it in a batch could produce. But it seems that he has no problem with that, and that is good for us, the consumer, because the brewer wants to maintain the quality of each bottle of liquid. What can I say? I mean, that is very admirable in today's highly competitive, cutthroat industry. I know that the local industry isn't very big per se. It's not as big as the industry, let's say, in the States or in Philippines. But showing this kind of dedication to your product is very admirable, regardless of where you're from. So hats off to you. Hats off to you for insisting on mixing them bottle by bottle, and also for being willing to produce less bottles per week in an effort to maintain the quality. You are a stand-up guy. Okay, enough pimping out of the brewer. Let's actually get to the flavor itself. Now, Tre Candy is a interesting flavor in a sense that if you are an 80s kid like me who has lived in Malaysia or who has grown up in Malaysia, then you will definitely get a lot of memories on the first time you vape Tre Candy. And that's simply because, like its name implies, Tre Candy, it's inspired by a certain candy that was on sale here in the 80s and 90s, and that candy is called Tribble. Correct. That candy is called Tribble. Basically what the flavor is, it's a peppermint flavor, a very strong peppermint flavor with a sort of chocolatey aftertaste. Now I'm going to take a vape on my Typhon GT just to refresh the taste. As soon as you draw the vape inside, you get your mouth coated by a very nice peppermint taste. The taste isn't overly sweet, or rather it isn't sweet, artificially sweet. It's a very natural sweetness, and it's a very familiar sort of taste or sensation you get in your mouth. The candy aside, the sort of peppermint taste that you get in your mouth is sort of like the taste that you get when you brush your teeth in the morning. You get a refreshing taste in your mouth. It's a palate cleansing taste, and it's not cold, overly cold like how a lot of menthol based liquids are. It's several steps less cold than Ocean Blue. It's several steps less cold than something like Clouds of Icarus's Ice Cloud. Very much, or very less cold than those liquids. Nevertheless, you still do get that cooling sensation in your mouth without it being overly overwhelming. Once that sort of peppermint taste subsides, on the exhale you get a nice aroma of chocolate. This aroma isn't in your face. It isn't like Cookie Sauce Limited's Rwanda. You know, once you vape that, you get that sort of dark chocolate taste head on. It's not like Mount Oak Vapor's Eskimo Kisses. You get that strong, bold chocolate taste straight on. It's not like, what else is chocolate? Well, let's just stick it to those two. It's not like Rwanda, where it's dark chocolate. It's not like Eskimo Kisses, where it's full-on milk chocolate. But it's the more on the aroma of chocolate rather than the full-on taste of chocolate. And that's an interesting sort of exhale that you get. The flavor does coat your palate very well, in a sense that you do get the peppermint taste all over, and after exhale the taste does linger in your mouth for a bit. It doesn't stay there for a long time like how some custard flavors do. It doesn't feel oily on the palate, and it's not overly dry. It's not like, what's an overly dry liquid? Well, basically it's not like how a dry beer or a dry wine, not like how an Asahi would clear your palate straight away, leaving it a bit dry. It's not like how a dry wine would leave your throat and palate totally cleansed. But it doesn't keep your mouth coated in oils like, let's say, Full Stop's tobacco-based liquids. They do leave an oily residue on the palate, and that means that the flavor sticks there for a long time. So by the time you take your next vape, unless of course you're chain vaping furiously, then the flavor should have already subsided by then. Now I'm vaping this on a Typhon GT. I've had my Typhon GT for a few days now, and it's always been full of Tre Candy. That's why I've gone through almost 2 bottles already. But I've also been vaping it on a Genesis tank. I've traded off my Bliss tank and I've drafted in a Kraken, which is also a dual coil tank, but we'll talk about that later. Basically, I'm running the Kraken on a single coil this time, with the air hole about halfway open, so it's not an overly open draw, and I run that on a GNA 20 device. I'm running it at 1.2 ohms at 17.5 watts, and I'm just going to give this a vape. Okay, so on the Genesis, the flavor profile does change a little. The cooling sensation from the peppermint steps up a notch. Of course, that's at 17.5 watts, right? It does step up a notch, and it does get a bit more intense in your palate. On a hot day, take a drag of this, and it'll be happy days. Already I can feel my body getting the chills from that. Having said that, it doesn't kill the flavor of the peppermint or the exhale of chocolate, and that's also a plus point. On the inhale, the sensation of chocolate does rise a bit more than when it's on a Typhoon. Of course, that could be simply because the wattage on the Typhoon is much lower, but I doubt that. I believe it has to do with the mesh that I'm using, or rather it has to do with cotton versus mesh. I always feel that on mesh you do get to pick up certain flavors which you miss out on cotton, and I get exactly that with this liquid. Earlier I mentioned that on the Typhoon, the chocolate taste comes in on the aftertaste, on the exhale. But on a Genesis, the chocolatiness does come in straight away, and that mixes very well with the peppermint. Again, I need to stress that this is peppermint, not just plain menthol, so it does bring in a lot of flavor. And again, it's not overly sweet or artificially sweet. I like how this one doesn't gank up your cores at all. I've run at least 6-7 tanks on the Typhoon already, and every time I pop open the chamber, excuse me, every time I pop open the chamber to check whether they are gunked up or not, I'm always surprised that they are clear of any gunk. So another super plus point for Tre Candy. Okay, so let's talk price. Tre Candy, it retails at, I believe, 45 ringgit. Yes, 45 ringgit for a 30 ml bottle. You can pick up JP Vapor's Tre Candy from a rather limited amount of resellers. So I would suggest that you go ahead and visit their Facebook page. It's facebook.com/JP Vape, one word. If you're searching it in the search box, it's JP space Vape. Okay, now one more thing before I go. When I was talking with the brewer, he did say that some of his customers told him the taste of Tre Candy reminds them of a candy called Toron. I have to go on the record and say that Tre Candy does not taste like Toron. Toron is a barley mint based candy, and the predominant taste you get from Toron is a sweet barley taste, and it's not even peppermint, it's menthol. So do not be mistaken, it's not a Toron taste, and Trebor has not changed into Toron. It is the taste of Trebor, and I can go on and on about it, but basically, again, Trebor is that white candy that came with a ridged shell, and there was a dab of chocolate in the middle. I was never patient enough to go all the way to a chocolate core, so I always ended up chewing it up, and this liquid tastes exactly like that. Alright, that's my thoughts on JP Vape Juice's Tre Candy. Please do go and give it a try if my description interests you. Again, in simple form, not overly sweet, does not gunk your coils. It tastes primarily of peppermint. It has an aftertaste of chocolate. 45 ringgit for 30 ml. It's a 9 mg 50-50 mix. I've covered all the bases, right? Pretty much. Okay guys, that's all from me today. I will be updating you with my weekly video blog tomorrow. No, it's only Saturday tomorrow, on Sunday. So please do hang around for that. I've posted a teaser of my upcoming select store. More details on that in my video blog. Well, till then, I'm gonna leave you with one last vape. Vape on brothers, have a good weekend. Let's kill it.